So how do we decide who's at the top of the food chain and who's at the bottom? Is it all about who your parents are, or is it something else entirely? We're about to dive into a 2,500-year-old story from the Buddha that gets right into the heart of this question. It's an origin story for the whole world, but with a twist you are definitely not going to see coming.
And at the core of this whole thing is this really powerful absolute claim. The Brahmins, who are ancient India's priestly class, they didn't just believe they were at the top of the social ladder, they believed they were divinely created to be there. This one idea, right here, is what kicks off the entire story.
So our story starts with these two guys, Vasetha and Bharadvaja. Now, they were born as Brahmins, the highest class you could be. But they decided to leave that whole life behind to become followers of the Buddha. And, as you can probably guess, their old friends were not thrilled about it.
So they go to the Buddha and tell him they're being insulted, just constantly. Their old community sees what they did as a huge betrayal. And why? Well, because for the Brahmins, their status wasn't just social, it was sacred. They had this story that they were born directly from the mouth of the creator god, Brahma himself, which made them literal heirs of the divine. So to leave that life, that was like abandoning their very nature.
Okay, so how does the Buddha respond to this pretty massive claim of divine origin? You might expect him to come back with a different divine story, right? But no, he starts with something much simpler, something undeniable, basic biological reality.
The Buddha's comeback is just so direct. He pretty much says, look, for all your claims about being born from a god's mouth, we can all see that Brahmin women get pregnant and give birth just like every other woman. It's such a powerful argument because it's based on something everyone can see with their own eyes. It doesn't matter what class you are, everyone is born from a human mother.
And he doesn't stop there. He takes it a step further. I mean, if Brahmins were inherently pure, then you'd think only they would be capable of good deeds, right? But the Buddha points out that you can find both good people and bad people in all four classes: aristocrats, Brahmins, peasants, and menials. It makes it totally clear that your morality has nothing to do with what family you were born into.
So, after taking apart their claim with pure logic, the Buddha doesn't just leave it at that. He offers a completely different origin story, a whole new myth to explain how the world and all these social classes actually came to be.
He describes this primordial world that is totally unlike anything we know. Just try to picture it. A cosmos where beings were made of pure mind, not flesh and bone. They literally glowed with their own inner light. They could fly through the sky, and they fed on pure joy. There were no divisions, no men or women, no rich or poor, just luminous beings.
But of course, this perfect state doesn't last. It all begins with a single reckless act. One of these beings tastes a kind of savory nectar on the earth, and just like that, craving is born. As they all start eating it, their inner light fades, and so the sun and moon have to appear to light the world. Then, as their bodies become more solid, some become more beautiful than others, and that leads to vanity. This pride makes the nectar vanish completely. And finally, lust appears. It's this slow devolution, a fall from grace that's driven entirely by their own internal failings.
This right here is a really key moment in the story. Think about it. It wasn't a sin against some god that caused humanity's first big loss. It was a moral failing inside themselves, vanity. The beautiful beings started looking down on the less beautiful ones, and it was this internal pride that made their divine food just disappear.
So after vanity, what's next? You guessed it, laziness. There was this special kind of rice that grew all on its own and replenished itself. But then someone got tired of gathering it every single day and decided to just hoard a bunch of it. And that one simple act introduces the whole idea of private property and scarcity where there used to be effortless abundance.
Okay, so let's recap. We now have a world with new problems: craving, vanity, lust, and hoarding. And all this hoarding inevitably leads to theft, lying, and even violence. It's out of this complete chaos that society as we know it is born. Not from some divine plan, but from a desperate, very human need for some kind of order.
So the beings all get together and they pretty much admit, wow, we have made a huge mess of things. And what do? They basically invent government. It's like the world's first social contract. They decide to elect one person to sort out disputes and keep the peace. And in return, they all agree to pay him a little bit of their rice. It's a solution that's born from pure necessity.
And here is the first real punchline. The name for this first ruling class, the Khatiyas, or aristocrats, literally means elected by the people.
They weren't appointed by a god, they were chosen in a popular vote to manage the community's resources. You know, the rice fields. So what about the Brahmins? In this story, they weren't born from a god's mouth either. Instead, they were a group of people who saw all the decay in society and decided to tackle it in a completely different way. Instead of ruling, they chose to go off into the wilderness to meditate and set aside bad, unskillful things. Their very name reflects their actions, not their birth. And the other classes? They come about in a similar way, all defined by the work that they do. The peasants are the ones who settle down, start families, and take up different trades. The menials are those who take up hunting and other odd jobs. In every single case, your class is just a description of your function, not some divine decree. So after completely rewriting the origin of the world and the social order, the Buddha brings his whole argument to its final, powerful conclusion. If class isn't from a god and is just a description of a job, then what truly makes a person worthy? What really makes someone the best?
The Buddha's answer is that Dhamma is the highest standard. Now, Dhamma is a big word, but you can think of it as principle or cosmic law, or simply the right way of living. It's not your birth, not your wealth, not your power. It is your conduct, your wisdom, and your ethics that truly define your worth.
And he ends by quoting this verse that creates one last amazing reversal. He says, look, if you're just going by the standard of family lineage, then yeah, the aristocrat is at the top. But by the ultimate standard, the one that applies to both humans and even gods, the person who is truly first is the one who is accomplished in knowledge and conduct.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? This was a 2,500-year-old story designed to deconstruct a social hierarchy. So what about us? What are the myths, the origin stories, that we tell ourselves today to explain why our world is structured the way it is?